Welcome to the Pause for Science video presentation. Whether this is your first rocket or you've been building them for years, the Pause for Science video makes them easy to do. Let's have some fun. Hi, I'm Jack Kolpus, and over the past several decades, I've taught hundreds of people how to build and launch Estes solid fuel powered model rockets. My students at GWIZ, the Hands-On Science Museum in Sarasota, Florida, nicknamed me the Rocket Man. Let me show you why. This is considered the gold standard of model rockets, the first one developed by Vern Estes himself. There are a lot of parts, so to keep from losing them, I suggest you carefully open your plastic bag with scissors. You can then use it to store the parts until you're completely finished with your model rocket. Leave the small bags closed until you actually have to use those parts. Let's take a look at what we've got. As with all model building, some prep time will make this a much more enjoyable experience. So make sure you have all your equipment and supplies ready and laid out before you. We'll go through them together. For construction supplies, you will need either wood or white paper glue. School glue works just fine. A pair of scissors, a pencil, sandpaper, an emery board works great for this, a small piece of tape, any kind will do, and for a ruler, there's one attached to the inside of your instructions if you don't have one handy. You'll also need a hobby or X-Acto knife. Make sure you use it carefully. As always, you should read the instructions before starting work. The rocket incorporates basic model rocketry construction techniques. This will really help you develop your rocket modeling skills. Read each step first. Lay the parts out on the table in front of you. Use the exploded view on each step to help match the parts to the kit, and collect all your construction supplies. In your kit, you should have a small plastic bag that has your parachute, metal engine hook, and elastic shock cord. Leave them in the bag until you need them later. 2 cardboard tubes, one light blue engine mount, and a dark green adapter ring. A small tube that looks like a plastic drinking straw. This is your launch lug. Don't lose it, it's important. A balsa wood sheet of fins. A paper sheet of decals. A plastic nose cone. And a cardboard body tube. Your tube marking guide and shock cord mount are in your pages of instructions. You'll cut those out later. For step 1, engine mount assembly, you're going to need a ruler. You can use your own, or use the one that's printed on the inside of your instructions, right between page 2 and page 3. I prefer to use the metric measurements because, well, I'm a science teacher. But whether you use metric or English, just be as careful as possible about all of your measurements. You're going to need the blue engine mount tube, the green adapter ring, and the engine hook for this next step. Carefully cut the corner of the plastic bag and work the engine hook out. Be careful you don't cut the parachute, shroud lines, or shock cord. Step 1, engine mount assembly. Lay one end of the light blue engine mount tube on the 0 mark of the ruler. With the pencil, mark that blue tube at 25 millimeters, or 1 inch, and another mark at 64 millimeters, or 2.5 inches from the end. You're now going to cut a very small slit near the end of the blue engine mount tube. It only needs to be as long as the metal engine hook is wide. Be careful, you may need to get some help with this. Don't cut yourself. You're now going to insert the engine hook into the slit you just made in the light blue engine mount tube. Look at the picture on step 1F to guide you. G. Test fit the green adapter ring by sliding it onto the front of the light blue engine tube over the metal engine hook. You might need to slightly crimp the blue tube to allow it to fit properly. Slide it to the 25 millimeter or 1 inch mark that you made in step D. H. Once the green ring is in place, apply glue to both sides of the ring. Set the assembly aside and allow it to dry. Remember, this is going to hold your engine inside your rocket. Strength here is a must. Step 2. Shock cord mount assembly. The shock cord holds the nose cone and rocket to your parachute. The strength of this connection is very important if you want to get your rocket back. So pay close attention to all of the details. A. Locate the shock cord mount on the bottom of page 7 in the pattern section. B. Carefully cut the shock cord mount along the solid lines. Next, you'll need the shock cord that's in the bag with your parachute. Pull it out of the corner that you previously cut. Be careful that you don't foul it up with the parachute shroud lines. C. Crease along the dotted lines as shown. Fold it carefully. Now flip it over and put your initials on the back of square number 2. It's easiest to hold the shock cord mount assembly upside down as shown in the video. Spread glue on section 2 and lay the shock cord at a slight angle coming across square 3. E. Fold section 1 down over the shock cord and the glue that you just applied. The instructions say to apply more glue to section 3. I prefer to apply the glue to the back of section 1. It's a little less messy that way. F. Firmly clamp the entire assembly between your fingers. You should see the imprint of the shock cord come through the paper. If you don't get glue on your fingers here, you probably didn't use enough glue. Remember, this has to be a strong connection. Check the mount for any gaps. Apply more glue if needed. Step 3, fin preparation. This is the step that takes from being a model builder to a model maker. It's going to take a little bit of work, but it's worth it. Your rocket's going to look great. Look carefully at the balsa wood sheet. You'll see the cut marks where the fins are going to separate. And if you look very closely, 3 small dents marking the root edge of your fin. These are important, so let's darken them with pencil. Remember to keep a small scrap of balsa wood to use as a glue applicator in step 4. I usually find that the balsa wood fins break apart as long as you do it gradually and gently. If you do need to use a hobby knife, please read the note on page 3, step 3. Be careful. You need to stack your fins together so that the root edges, the ones with the dot, are side by side. Now, lay the sandpaper or your emery board rough side up on the table, with the fins stacked tightly together as if they were one piece of wood. Move them back and forth against the sandpaper to get a nice, smooth finish. This is really important. This is the only attachment of your fin to the body of your rocket. It needs to be strong. D. This is listed as an optional step, but if you have time, it's really an important one. It makes your rocket look a lot more realistic and really does help with the performance. So round the leading edge as it goes into the wind and taper the trailing edge as much as possible, or at least round both edges. It really will make a difference in its look and the way it flies. Remember, the root edge, the one with the dot, has to remain flat and smooth. Step 4, engine mount installation. You have to do measurements here, in Step 7, and in Step 9. I prefer to do all three measurements at the same time. So let's get started. In Step 9, you have to measure 25 millimeters from the nose cone end of the body tube. Let's mark that now. Now turn the rocket around and mark it at both 38 and 44 millimeters. That's 1.5 inches and 1 3/4 inches. Is both of these marks later. C. Find that scrap piece of balsa wood you saved and use it to apply glue to the inside of the body tube at the 38 millimeter mark, 1.5 inches, that you just made. Remember, we're putting the glue on the inside of the body tube. So look at the video and take a look at the picture on page 3. Make sure that you've used a good amount of glue and you form a full circle inside the body tube. Now take the engine mount assembly with the hook facing out and slide it in one smooth movement into the body tube. Remember, you want to stop so that the light blue engine mount is flush with the body tube. Don't stop too early or it'll probably stick in place. Step 5, tube marking detail. We're getting ready to attach the fins, and it's a good idea to roughen the surface of the body tube. Find the tube marking guide in the bottom of page 7. It's in the pattern section. Carefully cut it out along the solid black lines. B. Wrap the guide around the body tube at the end that contains the engine mount. You're going to tape it in place, but it's important to make sure that the match lines match. They should cross over and hit each other exactly. Move the paper back and forth until they do, and then tape them in place. I use enough tape to stick the guide itself to the body of the rocket so that it won't slip. C. I hope you left enough room so that you can mark both ends of each of the arrows. You'll find 4 arrows. 3 are for fins, and 1 is for the launch lug. Label this one with LL, launch lug, so that you don't later get it mixed up with the fin guides. D. Using a door frame as a guide, draw straight lines connecting each pair of fin marks. Also connect the launch lug marks and extend these a little further up the rocket. You can always erase the marks later if you do them in pencil, and by the way, let's be careful not to mark up the door frame. Step 6, fin attachment. You're going to glue the root edge of the fin, the one we marked with the dot, to the rocket. If you can't find the dot, follow the note on page 4, step 6, fin attachment, to find the root edge. If your glue pot has been out for a while, it may have started to thicken. If it has, it's easy. Just add a little bit more glue and stir it up well before we get started on this next step. Remember, we're attaching fins, so don't use the line that you marked LL for launch lug. Use that later. A. Apply a thin coat of glue to the root edge of one of the fins. Put it in place against the rocket so that you spread glue over both surfaces, and then pull them apart. Allow them both to air dry for just a minute or two, then put some fresh glue on the root edge, push them together, and hold for a good solid bond. C. Adjust the fin as it's needed so it'll project straight up from the body tube. Work slowly and carefully. It's really important that you get these as accurate and straight as you can. Continue the same way until you have all 3 fins on your rocket. And remember, don't set the rocket on the fins. The glue's still wet. Set it up on its nose or in a cup somewhere where it won't fall over. Step 7. Launch lug attachment. That's the small part that looks like a drinking straw. I hope you haven't lost it. If you have, you can actually replace it with a drinking straw. Just cut one to about the same length. A. Double check to make sure that you're using the 44 millimeter or 1 3/4 mark that we made on the body of the rocket. Make sure the launch lug line extends past that 44 millimeter mark. B. Apply some glue to the launch lug. Make sure you don't get any inside the tube. Then attach it to the body of the rocket. Remember, it goes further up the body than the fins. Diagram 7B on page 5 is a little misleading. The launch lug will actually be lower than that on your rocket. C. Make sure that the launch lug is aligned as straight as possible with the body tube. Set it aside to dry. Eight, reinforcement detail. Don't skip this step, it's an important one for strength. Glue fillets are important because they help blend the fins, launch lugs, and other components into the body tube. This blending improves the look of your rocket, strengthens the attachment points, and allows smoother airflow over the rocket during flight. This is a really important step. A. Systematically, so that you don't miss anything, add some glue to each one of the connection points at the fins and on both sides of the launch lug. After you've added the glue, run your finger down the length of the connection and that will smooth it out. You'll be amazed how well this works, and it really helps. Now, shock cord mount attachment. This one's important. Remember, this is what holds the rocket body to your parachute and nose cone. If this separates, something's going to get lost. 9A. Double check the measurement we made earlier at 25 millimeters from the nose cone end of the rocket. B. Curl the shock cord mount around the tip of your finger while holding the shock cord in your hand. Apply some glue, a lot of glue, to the shock cord mount. C. Set the mount back at least 25 millimeters or 1 inch from the open end of the rocket body. This will allow clearance for the nose cone when the parachute is released. Using your finger, firmly press the mount up against the inside of the body of rocket. Hold it there for a few seconds until the glue sets up. Assembly. Most of these rockets now come with pre-assembled, pre-tied parachutes. Aren't we lucky? If yours didn't, you'll have to refer to page 5, step 10, and carefully follow the instructions on assembly of the parachute. It's really not that difficult. Step 11. Parachute and shock cord attachment to nose cone. The plastic eye on the nose cone may still have some plastic called flashing inside it. This will need to be removed. I find that a small screwdriver works best. Remember to push down toward a tabletop or the floor and put something underneath it so that you don't mar the tabletop. Remember, push away from yourself and away from your fingers. If you do have to use a hobby knife to clear this out, be careful. The plastic eye has to stay intact, and, by the way, so do your fingers. Rock the knife back and forth gently, and then pop the flashing out with a screwdriver, the way we suggested before. After the flashing's removed, it's a good idea to run an emery board or some sandpaper through the eye. This will make it a lot easier to get the shrouds through. Now for the parachute. Carefully cut open the bag and remove the parachute. Make sure you don't cut the parachute or any of the shroud lines. Try your best not to get the shroud lines tangled. Pull the 3 loops down equally and pass them through the eye of the nose cone, as shown in Figure A. 11B. I suggest that you fly the nose cone through the loop that you had just formed with the shrouds after passing them through the eye. Then, a gentle tug on the nose cone should, in fact, form a knot between your parachute shrouds and the eye of the nose cone. Your parachute is obviously important for the safe return of your rocket. So at this point, let's take a minute to double check all of the knots that were tied on the parachute. There should be 6 of them. If they come undone now, we can easily retie them. If they come undone at 600 feet, it's a little bit more difficult. 11D. Using a good strong double knot, the kind you tie your shoes with without the bow. Tie the shock cord to the eye of the nose cone. Double check the knot, and then it's a good idea to trim off any extra shock cord that you have so that it doesn't get tangled in the shrouds during flight. Step 12, finishing your rocket. If time allows, it's really great to be able to paint your rocket, especially if you can spray paint it. But even if you can't, the decals that come with this kit are peel and stick. They're easy to use and really make your rocket look good. You may have to trim some of the decals with scissors before you put them on. Once they're stuck in place, they're pretty hard to move. Well, what do you know? Once we pack the parachute and slide in the nose cone, that bag of parts starts to look like a real rocket. Check your instruction pages for pre-flight preparation, and I'll see you out at the launch pad. Not launching your rocket is the only way to guarantee that you will not lose or damage it. However, you will also miss out on the excitement that a true rocket launch can bring. So let's get started. Rockets come in a variety of styles, but launch prep is pretty much the same for all of them. We'll use the Alpha rocket to demonstrate. Model rocketry calls for a balance in construction. Materials must be lightweight for flight, yet strong enough to withstand the forces of blastoff. I call this the 2-finger test. Gently, with 2 fingers, wiggle all the connections that you made in constructing your rocket. Fins, launch lug, engine mounts, and body tube must all be tested before heading out to the launch field. If it comes loose here, we can make repairs before launch. Here's where a quick-drying glue or a glue gun might come in handy. The exception would be the nose cone. We want the nose cone to lift out easily for parachute or streamer deployment.
It's time to pack the parachute and get ready for launch.
Next, you'll need some squares of flame-proof recovery wadding. It's very important to use flame-proof wadding and not tissue paper or paper towels.
You need to use 3 or 4 sheets of wadding, crumple them up very loosely, one at a time, and insert them into the open end of the body tube where the parachute's going to go. Insert them one at a time and just slide them gently down with a finger.
The purpose of this wadding is to stop the sparks and flame from the ejection charge from reaching your parachute. So they're fairly important.
Remember, pack them in loosely, one at a time. Just like with recreational parachuting, everybody has to pack their own parachute.
Lift the parachute up so that the nose cone clears the table. This will help straighten the shroud lines. Then blouse out the parachute to make sure that it's not going to stick together.
The best way to do this is to put both of your hands up underneath and hold the parachute open. If the shroud lines are about equal here, they don't have to be perfect. But as long as there's not one noticeably shorter than the others, we're all set to go. So it's time to spike, fold, and roll your parachute. Spike it by pinching the center of the blue dot at the top and pull the sides together. Then fold it down from the top to about halfway. And then roll in from both sides. Once that is done, you can roll the shroud lines gently and loosely around the parachute.
Now that the parachute has been folded and the shroud lines wrapped around it, you can carefully pack the parachute into the open end of the body tube.
Push the shock cord in behind it. And insert the nose cone. Hey, that really looks like a rocket now.
Decals and decorations will really personalize your rocket and make it look more realistic. The power of a rocket engine is designated by a letter and 2 numbers, like this A83. I suggest you start with the smallest engine recommended by your rocket manufacturer. I think it's better to insert the engine into the rocket first and then place the igniter. You'll notice your engine has a large and small opening. The large opening is for the deployment charge that ejects your parachute or streamer and nose cone. The small opening is called the nozzle. This is where the force is provided for liftoff and flight of your rocket. I differ from the instructions here. I prefer to put the engine into the rocket first and then insert the igniter. There's much less chance of damaging the very sensitive igniter tip. Insert the engine with the small opening facing out of the rocket. A little NASA space powder or talcum powder helps here to keep your engine from getting stuck in your rocket. Many rocket systems use a metal hook that snaps into place when the engine is slid into the rocket. Some use a plastic ring that twist locks into place. In either case, it's important to attach the engine with some locking device. If the engine is not secure, it is likely to be shot out of the rocket during the ejection charge, which is supposed to deploy your recovery system. Some engines come equipped with a screw mount for holding the engine in place. First, you must test fit the ring in the rocket without its engine in place. Make sure it locks tightly into place and that you can remove it. If the ring won't twist into place, you might need to remove some of the plastic flashing beneath the tab on the ring itself. An emery board works fine to do this. Remove a little at a time because you want it to be a snug fit. Now test fit the engine. There's a hole down inside the rocket that the engine must fit into. The engine will fit well down into the rocket body. You should feel it slip into place. If the engine will not fit through the opening, you may need to sand the plastic. This can be done with an emery board or a piece of sandpaper taped to a pencil or a small dowel. I prefer to seat the engine into the lock ring first. Make sure you do this with the small opening of the engine facing outward. Then insert the engine, line the tabs with the notches in the fin assembly, and give it a twist. Make sure it's in there tight. Great. Now you're ready to insert the igniter and plug. Igniters should not be inserted until you are ready to launch. The end of the igniter is very brittle and must be handled with the utmost care. It's best to use scissors to open the package. Separate the igniters by cutting the tape strip between them. Leave the tape in place as it helps to keep the igniter wires from touching each other. It's best not to try to tear these apart. These are very sensitive. The igniter is like an electrical match. The black chemical at the end will burst into flame when electricity flows through. This will in turn ignite the propellant in your engine, and your rocket will lift off. You'll need to separate one of the igniter plugs that came with your engines to have it ready for use. If you don't have an igniter plug, a piece of masking tape will work here. Carefully insert the igniter tip into the engine. It needs to go in about 1 centimeter or 1/2 inch until it hits the propellant. Make certain you don't damage the tip of the igniter and that the two wires do not touch each other. Now insert the igniter plug to hold the igniter in place. Carefully bend the wires down away from the metal engine hook.
Launch controller test. This test is best done before going outside. Unwind a little bit of the wire and then attach the 2 alligator clips together. Now take the cap from the launch rod and insert the attached safety key into the small hole located right beside the light bulb. Push it down gently until it sets. The bulb should light brightly. Good batteries are crucial here. If the bulb does not light, check for corrosion on the alligator clips and the shaft of the safety key itself. Clean these areas gently with sandpaper or a pencil eraser. Buff them until they shine brightly. Sometimes, especially after repeat launches, the wire breaks directly under the insulation right next to the alligator clip. You can feel this break with your thumbnail. If this happens, the clip needs to be replaced. In the field, you can strip the wire and use the alligator clip like a clothespin to hold the wire to the igniter. It'll get you by in a pinch and you won't have to cancel the launch. Launch pad assembly. Slide the tripod legs one at a time into the base. They should slide in fairly easily. If they're too loose, a little masking tape on the inside will hold them in place. If they're hard to slide in, they're probably upside down. Connect the two-part launch rod. Slide one end into the other. A small amount of lubrication is not a bad idea here. It'll certainly help getting them apart later. Once you have them together, tap them onto a hard surface until they make a tight fit. A tile floor or cement walkway work fine.
Use the wing nut and slide the launch rod into the smaller of the two holes.
Next, we're going to slide the blast deflector onto the launch rod with the stem pointing up. Slide it all the way down to the base. Next, place the safety cap onto the launch rod. Keep it there, except for countdown and launch. The rest of these steps would be done outside at the launch pad. Remove the safety cap and carefully slide the rocket launch lug over the launch rod. Remember, the launch lug is frequently the part that looks like a small straw. Don't drop the rocket, just lower it carefully down to the blast deflector. Replace the safety cap. Unwind the wire from the launch controller and extend it to its full length. All observers should be behind a line at this distance. Now connect an alligator clip to each lead coming from the igniter. It doesn't matter which one connects to which side. Make sure that the leads don't cross and that the clips don't touch each other or any other metal. Now you should be all set. Take the safety cap and key with you. Remember, these last few steps will be done outside at the launch pad. Insert the safety key into the hole and push gently. If you get a light, shout out, "Ready to launch," and start the countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. On 0, press and hold the square launch button. Good luck. If the rocket does not launch, take your thumb off the button, pull the safety key, and wait 20 to 30 seconds or more. And then try it again. Insert the key. Shout out, "Ready to launch." 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press and hold. If the rocket fails to launch, remember, it happens to NASA too. Take your thumb off the button, pull the safety key, and wait 1 minute and try again.
While they're not absolutely necessary, a few extra supplies may save your launch or ensure a relaunch. This could include extra igniters and plugs, wadding, batteries, a parachute, streamer material, and a balsa fin or two. Your toolkit could include tape, I wrap mine around a pencil, scissors, sandpaper, needle nose pliers, great for getting out a pesky engine, instant glue gel, the gel works on wood surfaces too, and a hobby knife. The goal of the Helping Kids Reach for the Stars program is to get kids involved in model rocketry. For more information, contact our website, therocketman.net. Won't you join us in helping kids reach for the stars?